During its first month, the Trump administration has brought dramatic proposals and unprecedented changes to the government, including a sweeping effort to remake the executive branch. Our new series, On Democracy, is taking a step back to look at big questions about laws, institutions, and norms that have shaped America and the challenges they face today. Conservative commentator Michael Knowles is the host of The Michael Knowles Show on the Daily Wire, and he joins us now. Welcome to the NewsHour. Thanks for being here.
Thank you so much for having me. It's an honor to be here.
So you're in town to attend CPAC, right? The largest conservative gathering in America. What are you hearing from people attending there, from people in your audience as well, about this first month of the Trump presidency? Are they seeing what they voted for?
Very much so. This year feels different even than it did in 2016, 2017. And I think it's because this time Trump won the popular vote. And I think it's because of this new voter coalition bringing over a lot of voters who previously had long voted for Democrats.
Yeah.
It feels as though the realm of public discourse and the political imagination has really opened up.
When you look at the conservative part of the party, conservative movement, if you will, I mean, beyond Donald Trump, who's a rallying figure for everyone, what is it right now that what's the tie that binds? What does it mean to be a conservative today?
You know, if you get 100 conservatives into a room, you'll get 100 different answers of what it means to be a conservative. The only way that you can get Kennedy Democrats and 1 in 5 black male voters and 46% of Hispanics and even 40% of women under the age of 30 to come over and vote for Trump, to even just join a coalition altogether, is to appeal to something that is deeper than political ideology. And I think that's what Trump has done.
What is that? What's he appealing to?
When President Trump comes out and he says, look, we're going to take care of Americans first, we're going to enforce the law, kick out the gangsters, classify the cartels as foreign terrorist organizations, which allows us to take them on more directly. You know, this is basic stuff that you don't need to be some bow tie wearing conservative to agree with. You know, that cuts across party lines.
So low immigration is one of the binding
Well, just
factors.
reducing, it's nothing against the immigrants. It's just that we have the highest foreign-born percentage of the population ever, and Americans of all races, all geographies, all backgrounds seem to think it's time to assimilate people and to reduce that. Or you notice on the LGBT issues, which were a big issue in November.
Yeah.
I think a lot of people, no animus, no desire to offend or exclude anybody, but they think this ideology has gone a bit too far.
I want to ask you about President Trump's first month in office and some of the behavior we've seen from him. He did recently quote Napoleon, which raised some eyebrows, right? He said, "He who saves his country does not violate any law." He compared himself to a monarch, saying, "Long live the king." Does that worry you, that kind of language? I mean, do you want to see a king-like president?
It doesn't worry me at all. To make a comparison with Napoleon, I think there's a little wink and a nod here from Trump. You know, he makes plenty of jokes. But the broader political
But this is a joke or this is serious?
Well, I think he uses winsome and whimsical language. But this line from Napoleon, which is a rearticulation of Cicero and John Locke, two very important thinkers for the American founders and framers, this just gets to a basic point about the country, which is that in times of great national crisis and distress, extraordinary measures can be taken. You saw this with Abraham Lincoln, you saw this with Franklin Roosevelt, you've seen this with plenty of American presidents, George Washington for that matter.
Extraordinary measures meaning a stronger executive?
Well, an executive that wields power in a just and effective way.
What about this idea of checks and balances in a democratic system? This is where we hear a lot of concern from people who track democracy here because the other two branches of government seem to have been weakened under President Trump. He's usurped constitutional congressional authority, right?
Has he? I don't think he has.
By blocking funds that were appropriated by Congress. He's essentially said that they don't have to comply by judicial rulings that they disagree with. I mean, how is that a democracy?
Oh, well, first of all, the majority of Americans voted for Trump. So that would seem to be in itself a good expression of democracy.
Well, most people voted for him, but he didn't win a majority. I take your point.
Most voters. He won the majority of voters. And but then when we're talking about something like executive funding, the president has a large prerogative to control that kind of funding. You know, some people are suggesting that Trump's cleanup of the executive branch is unprecedented. That is simply not true. This is a more than 100-year-old precedent. Woodrow Wilson established by executive action the Bureau of Efficiency. It's almost the same name as Elon Musk's Doge.
Well, to bring it back to 2025, I mean, there are rulings that say he needs to unblock some of the funds that he's frozen, and the administration has not complied. Does it worry you if he's ignoring judicial rulings?
Well, as you just say, we have a system of checks and balances. We do not have a system, or at least we should not have a system, of judicial supremacy. the judiciary is a co-equal branch of government with the legislature and with the executive branch.
So the executive has the right to ignore judicial ruling?
The executive has the right to fight judicial rulings when they are overstepping. And in this case, the notion that the judiciary can, by fiat, undermine the president's legitimate authority to control the executive branch, to me, is crazy. I mean, even when you think about some of that executive authority, how much of that authority was usurped, certainly not by Trump, but even by recent presidents, many of whom were Democrats, and how much of that authority was delegated by the Congress to the executive branch? One might argue that that was not a good idea, that Congress should do more lawmaking and not give it away to bureaucrats. But the Congress certainly has done that. And so, I don't know, to argue that Trump is an authoritarian because he is trying to reduce the size and scope of the executive branch in the federal government, to me, is crazy.
You mentioned you think there was a lot of progressive overreach that helped propel President Trump back into the White House. And specific to that, you've called transgenderism in particular one of those issues that you think moved people and moved the needle. You've also said previously that it should be eradicated from public life entirely. And when you were asked about that, you said that you were calling for an end to the ideology, not for an end to the people. Yeah. If you have changed your view at all, please let me know. No. But I will confess I don't know what the difference is when articulated like that. So could you explain it? Sure.
If I say that I want to eradicate poverty, I'm not saying that I want to eradicate all the poor people. Quite the opposite. I would like to help the poor people by eradicating poverty. And so when I made my comments at CPAC a couple of years ago, I've now repeated it so many times, I think I have it memorized. I said, for the good of society, and especially for the good of the poor people who have fallen prey to this confusion, transgenderism must be eradicated from public life entirely, the whole preposterous ideology at every level. And the reason for this, the reason why I would say, in particular for those who have fallen prey to the ideology, that we ought to do that, is because men can't really become women. That's not how human nature works. I have a great deal of sympathy for people who are confused about their sex, but I don't think it helps people to lie to them. So just as a matter of public life, I think we need to respect reality.
I will say, as you're saying that it's reality, it is a belief system that you hold. I mean, transgenderism is something that has been acknowledged by medical professionals. There's an entire
and rejected
body,
by medical professionals.
By a few. There's an entire body
Dr.
of
Paul
scientific
McHugh,
and medical knowledge that backs this up, and that's what gender-affirming care has all been based on in recent years.
Not really.
I will just ask you this, though. We're talking about 1% of the U.S. adult population here.
30% of Gen Z self-identifies as LGBT.
Because more people, experts believe, are comfortable coming out and sharing the identity.
Or because it's a social contagion.
You believe transgender people make other people transgender? Is that what you're saying?
This is also backed up in the medical literature. There was a study in 2018 that showed that school children who are socializing with people who identify as transgender are much more likely to identify as transgender themselves.
Michael, you realize this is the same argument people made about gay people, right?
Well, I'm talking about the whole LGBT ideology, so I suppose in some ways I'm making that argument myself.
You don't believe that gay people exist?
Say it again?
You don't believe gay people exist?
Well, I think people have same-sex attractions and all of that. But I suppose the question I would have to ask is...
But that is, no, in answer to my question, do you believe that gay people exist?
I think some people are attracted to members of the same sex.
Those would be gay people, correct?
Well, I don't think that one's sexual desires necessarily define one's identity.
Without getting into a semantic back and forth about it, in clarifying what you have said, when you use words like eradicate, I'm just asking about in terms of the language here, when you use words like eradicate,
well, you know what the word eradicate means.
Do you worry that puts a target on people's backs?
Certainly not. In fact, the only targets that I've had on my own back are when I question these kinds of ideologies that have been so terrible for people. The only times I've ever been attacked in public, in one case, someone is in federal prison for trying to blow me up at a speech in Pittsburgh, is because I dared to question the trans ideology. People are being introduced to this ideology at younger and younger ages. It can lead to horrific outcomes, especially for younger people put on puberty blockers, which often cannot be reversed. Leads to castration, bone problems, and early death. These are not the sort of things that we should wish for people if we wish for their own good. And so what it really comes down to is whether or not a man can become a woman, or a man can secretly be a woman if he appears to be a man. And my contention is that just isn't how human nature works.
I'm just going to clarify, you did say it's your contention. I would encourage people to go check out the research and studies on their own. I do want to ask you about this political moment we're in now, though, because when you look at our democratic system, there is undoubtedly an ascendant conservative movement right now. It's worth pointing out, though, that the party tends to push out anyone who disagrees with President Trump. Mitch McConnell seems to be the latest example now, right? Only really speaking out against President Trump when he says that he's not running for re-election. Does it worry you about the future of the party that the coalition doesn't seem to hold without Donald Trump?
Trump is the unifying figure right now. There's no question about it. Now, what's unusual about it is to say that people are kicked out of the party when they disagree with Trump makes it sound like the party is shrinking. But what we saw in 2024 is actually the party is growing. It's just taking in new people, and it's losing some of the figures who have been members in the past, like Liz Cheney or Adam Kinzinger or those kinds of figures.
People who disagreed with President Trump, right?
Correct, yeah. That means that there's a new coalition that has formed. Trump is the singular figure. He is a magnetic personality, he is an American original, and I think he's a genius-level politician.
So does the coalition hold without him?
That remains to be seen. I don't think there's really any going back to Bushism. And if anyone can pick up the standard of Trumpism afterwards, we'll have to wait and see. But the Republican Party is a different and stronger thing now because of Donald Trump.
Michael Knowles, host of The Michael Knowles Show on the Daily Wire. Thank you for being here. Appreciate your time.
Thank you for having me.